In the early hours of April 26, 1986, the Chernobyl Nuclear Power Plant hummed with routine activity, deep within the facility. A safety test was scheduled for reactor number 4. This test was designed to simulate a power failure, a scenario planners had prepared for extensively. It was meant to be a controlled experiment, a demonstration of the plant's robust safety mechanisms. But history rarely follows a script. A series of delays pushed the test from the afternoon into the late night, creating a chain of unforeseen circumstances. The original, experienced shift of engineers went home, replaced by a night crew less familiar with the specific procedures for this test. The plan was simple: reduce the reactor's power output to a low, stable level, then simulate a blackout to see if the turbines could generate enough residual energy to power the cooling pumps until the backup generators kicked in. However, as the operators began to lower the power, the reactor behaved unexpectedly. The power level dropped far too quickly, falling to a near shutdown state. This was the first critical juncture, a moment where the test could have been aborted. According to safety protocols, a reactor that has stalled this way should be fully shut down for at least 24 hours to allow for stabilization. But the pressure to complete the long-delayed test was immense. The decision was made to press on. To bring the power back up, the operators began to withdraw the control rods from the reactor core. These rods, made of boron carbide, are designed to absorb neutrons and slow down the nuclear reaction. Removing them increases the reaction rate, but they pulled out far more rods than safety regulations permitted, essentially disabling one of the primary safety systems. The reactor was now in an extremely unstable condition, like a car being driven at high speed with no brakes. The operators in the control room were not reckless individuals. They were confident in their machinery and their ability to manage it. They believed they were in control, making calculated adjustments to a complex but understandable system. The test officially began just after 1 o'clock in the morning. The main turbines were shut off, simulating the power outage. This reduced the flow of cooling water to the reactor core. With the control rods mostly withdrawn, the nuclear reaction began to accelerate uncontrollably. Within seconds, a massive power surge occurred. The emergency shutdown button, known as AZ5, was pressed. This should have been the final, fail-safe action, inserting all control rods back into the core to stop the reaction. But the RBMK reactor had a fatal design flaw. The tips of the control rods were made of graphite, which momentarily increased the reaction rate before the boron could start absorbing neutrons. In that split second, the graphite tips displaced the remaining coolant, causing an instantaneous and catastrophic power spike. The energy surge was so immense that it ruptured the fuel channels. A series of massive steam explosions followed, blowing the 2,000-ton lid off the reactor and exposing the glowing graphite core to the night air. A fire began to rage, spewing a plume of radioactive isotopes high into the atmosphere. The disaster had begun, but in the immediate aftermath, no one truly understood the scale of what had just happened. The instruments had gone off the charts, and the plant was in darkness. Initial reports described it as a fire, a manageable industrial accident. The first responders, the firefighters from the nearby town of Pripyat, arrived without any knowledge of the radiation. They were sent to fight a fire on the roof of the reactor building, believing it was a standard blaze. They were exposed to lethal doses of radiation within minutes. Inside the plant, engineers desperately tried to pump water into what they thought was an intact core, unaware that the core no longer existed. They were trying to solve a problem that was incomprehensibly worse than they imagined. Each action, taken with the intent to contain the damage, only worsened the situation or exposed more people to deadly fallout. The radioactive cloud did not respect borders. It drifted silently on the winds, first north over Belarus, then west across Scandinavia and much of Europe. It was a Swedish nuclear power plant, hundreds of miles away, that first detected the abnormally high radiation levels and alerted the world that a major nuclear incident had occurred somewhere in the Soviet Union. Only then did the Soviet government, after days of silence, acknowledge the accident. The denial had allowed the radioactive fallout to spread unchecked, contaminating vast areas of land and exposing millions to its invisible poison. The decision was made to evacuate Pripyat, the model Soviet city built to house the plant's workers and their families. Over 36 hours after the explosion, buses lined up to take nearly 50,000 residents away from their homes. They were told it would be for 3 days. They left their pets, their belongings, their entire lives behind. never to return. The city became a ghost town overnight, a silent monument to the tragedy. An exclusion zone was established, a vast, contaminated landscape that would remain uninhabitable for centuries. Looking back, the Chernobyl disaster was not the result of a single, catastrophic failure. It was the culmination of 1,000 small moments, a cascade of human decisions made under pressure. It was the delay that changed the crew. It was the decision to not shut down the reactor when it stalled. It was the choice to override safety systems in the pursuit of completing a test. It was the confidence that bordered on arrogance, a belief that the machine could always be controlled. Any one of these moments, had it gone differently, could have averted the catastrophe. The butterfly effect of 1986 began with a simple choice: to proceed instead of to stop. It was a test of a safety system that, through a sequence of seemingly minor errors, led to the world's worst nuclear disaster. A test that proved a system is only as strong as the human judgments that guide it. One more test was all it took. Want to hear about the little moments that totally shifted the course of history? Subscribe to the channel.